Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar, 5 Tips for Simplifying Your APQP and PPAP Processes. This event, brought to you by Quality Magazine, is sponsored by HiQA. I'm your moderator, Michelle Bingert, Managing Editor of Quality. Thanks for joining us. Today's presenter is Chris Mendocino, Vice President of Product for HiQA. Chris has been working with industrial manufacturing technology for his entire professional career. He's designed, sold, serviced, and supported various technologies such as CAD, CAM, DNC, OEE, IIoT, ERP, and now quality management systems in a wide variety of industries for companies both in the U.S. and abroad. As the VP of Product for HiQA Incorporated, he is highly engaged with manufacturers worldwide to bring the voice of the customer to HiQA's product development process. Don't forget to submit your questions, and later in the program, our presenter will address as many of them as possible. Today's event is being recorded and archived on qualitymag.com. Before we hear from Chris, please welcome Tim Hogan from HiQA for a brief overview. Tim?
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. We know your time is very valuable, and we're very grateful you chose to spend some of it with us. Before we show you the details of how you can completely automate your APQP process, we'd like to take a few minutes and go over some of the highlights of HiQA and how we may be able to help you and your company. Simply put, HiQA is a quality management software solution for manufacturers. We support everything from ballooning a print and extracting GD&T, to gauge management, to integrated sampling plans, to shop floor data collection, and of course, automated APQP documentation, and much more. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Here's HiQA at a glance. We were founded in 2015 and have both distribution partners across the world and direct salespeople here in the US and Canada. For all our company resources, 25% of the employees are dedicated to supporting you after the sale. Implementation is a key component of the HiQA solution, and we have an entire team that is dedicated to your success. We currently have over 900 customers globally, from small 5-person job shops to multi-billion-dollar OEM corporations. Now, we're very proud of this list, but it's not meant to brag. We simply wanted to show you some of our customers and reassure you we currently work in many different industries: aerospace, medical, automotive, construction, oil and gas, even defense. Now, we're here together today to talk about automating your APQP process with the HiQA PQP functionality. But why do we need to streamline and automate it? Because oftentimes, these systems are very disjointed. From process flow diagrams to PFMEAs to control plans to FAI reports to gauge R&Rs to capability studies, even process control. These are commonly all separate systems or separate documents that need to be maintained and kept track of within your quality system. As the quality engineers with us today will attest to, this is commonly referred to as death by spreadsheet. There are so many different forms and spreadsheets and documents and lists to maintain and track and coordinate. A lot of companies have full-time employees whose only job is to compile PPAP submission documentation. So how can we fix a disjointed problem? We fix it by keeping the digital thread intact and increasing the collaboration within your organization and even outside your organization. From the time you acquire the information from your customer, the collaborative digital lifecycle begins. It starts with data from your customer, typically a 2D printer or 3D model. So then you can start the planning phase where you automatically balloon the drawing, extract the information, including the GD&T, create inspection plans, and even assign special designators like key characteristics. On the production side, you can manage all the gauges in your facility or synchronize them to your existing gauge management software, collect all of the inspection data, both for in-process checks and final inspection, and even provide real-time SPC data, including notifications for out-of-tolerance situations. And if a dimension is out of spec, it can, if you want, automatically pop up a non-conformance report for the person inspecting to fill out. Now, once the plan is made and the data is acquired, this information is automatically populated in the FAI report. And now what if I told you that all your APQP documentation is automatically generated for you? No more 20-tab Excel spreadsheets, which is why we're all here today. So let's dig into it and talk about 360. HiQA 360 is a platform for quality management. At its core is the key element, the database. HiQA is a database-driven solution. Every print ballooned, every change made, every document modified, every gauge used, all part history, all run charts, histograms, PQP templates, submissions, workflows. It's all stored in the database on your secured server and available real time. So HiQA removes the need for a file management system for your quality department because there are no files. HiQA can balloon your print in one click. And typically in less than 2 minutes, you'll have a fully ballooned drawing, including automatically extracting all the GD&T information and building a complete bill of characteristics. This is the foundational element in the database for the part. It's not a file or a form that has to be tracked or put in the right folder. It's in the database and everyone has access to it. From there, you can assign gauge categories and special designators like key characteristic, and it's all captured in the inspection plan and stored in the database. You can even define dimensions by operation, or even better, you can create operation plans and modify nominals for doing in-process checks. Inspection Manager has a fully integrated gauge management package. And something unique to HiQA is that we're the only QMS that we know of that tracks the usage data of every gauge. You know exactly what parts are measured, when, and by who. For measuring manual in-process checks on the shop floor, we have a simple, intuitive interface the machine operator or floor inspector can use. They don't have to use it, but it's another tool available to them from HiQA. Not only shop floor data, but we can automatically bring in data from any automated measurement device. And it's software agnostic as well. Any software, any brand of device, we can automatically bring in that data. Do you need to track SPC data? Simply check one box and you'll have access to XBAR and R charts, histograms, CPK, PPK, you name it, on the shop floor or at your desk. All real time, all at your fingertips. And all of this data is stored in the same exact secured database. And we automate all types of reporting, from FAI or other reports needed for PPAP submissions to custom inspection plans for in-process checks. Now, that was a quick and brief overview of some of the functionality in our software Inspection Manager. But we're here to show you a more in-depth view of the PQP functionality, which is how to automate APQP. So a lot of you are familiar with this quote from the late entrepreneur Steve Jobs. Now, Apple was synonymous with innovation and creativity to fulfill a need in the market that customers didn't know how to ask for or even what they wanted. So why did we bring this up? Because when we asked customers what they needed with their APQP process, they said, we need a better way to manage our documents. But the engineers at HiQA thought, why do we need documents? The content of the documents is now digitized and in the database. You don't need save as any longer. It's all in the database. And now that the data is digitized, you can build them into package templates. Now, what does that mean? It means you can build an index of packages that have all the necessary requirements for each customer or submission level you need. Plus, you only need to build it the first time. After that, you can simply select it from the index and it'll automatically populate your checklist with the required documents. Now, don't think you need to do this all yourself. Inspection Manager PQP functionality comes out of the box with standard templates, including all recommended AIAG templates for PFMEAs, control plans, and the rest of them. You can also import your own templates, or we have an included report generator, which you can design your own. Do you find yourself waiting for approvals, either internally or from your customer? You'll have integrated digital workflows to increase collaboration and visibility throughout the entire process. And you guessed it, it's all stored in the database and available real time. So if I could just tease you with one more benefit before we get into the 5 tips. Do you have suppliers? HiQA gives you the flexibility to have all the functionality of the 360 in your manufacturing facility, securely behind your firewall where your IT group has full control of the data security. Your data is always safe. But now you can automatically send and receive data with your suppliers through an outside secure server with HiQA PQP supply chain. Imagine submission packages coming in from your suppliers in a consistent and comprehensive manner on your templates and in your formats. So, well, that's enough for me. Thank you very much for your attention, and please welcome Chris Mendocino to show you 5 tips on how to simplify your APQP and PPAP processes.
Hey there, thank you, Tim. All right, welcome everybody again, and again, thank you for taking the time to join this session. So again, my name is Chris Mendocino, and I wanted to take you through a bit more in depth some of the core principles that Tim was highlighting here about our product, and kind of bring you through the stages of evolution that our customers are going through and radically transforming the way that they manage quality within their businesses. So let's get started here. So the 5 tips or the 5 principles that we're going to kind of go through here are as follows: digitize, centralize, templatize, and then we're going to connect and automate. Okay, and we're going to go through each of these 5 principles. I'm going to kind of give a quick overview, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time in the product as well, getting a look at how the system works and how it's applying all of these different principles here. And something to note here is that when we're talking about 5 tips for simplifying your APQP PPAP processes, we're talking about this from a systems or a process management kind of perspective. Okay, so what are the tools that we're using? What are the systems that we're applying to better fulfill the PPAP requirements that are coming down on us from, or coming down on you guys from your customers and so on. Okay, so let's first talk about digitize and what the current state is. A lot of our customers, or a lot of companies that we encounter, are still kind of in this situation here. They're planning for quality, they're ballooning their prints, they're building inspection plans, and they're also doing their data collection on paper, right? So they're doing all that on paper, and all that paper gets stored in some filing cabinet somewhere, right? Some very high-tech data synchronization there, right? So a lot of companies fall into this or are still doing this, mostly because they haven't found the tools to really replace these current processes well. Okay, and so that's one hurdle. But really, what are the benefits of being able to digitize all of this information, right? And being able to digitize our quality planning and our data collection and so on. Well, one of the things is instant access to information. There's so many companies that we talk to where in order to find out what's actually happening with one of your jobs, one of your orders from a quality perspective, you have to go talk to the actual operator at the machine. You have to talk to one of the inspectors in the QC room. You have to talk to a variety of people who know the information because they have it written down on paper in front of them at their desk. Okay, and so in a digital age, this shouldn't be that difficult, right? And that leads to the visibility of jobs and orders and their progress, right? So if we want to see where we're bottlenecking within a manufacturing shop floor, we have OEE systems that maybe a lot of you are familiar with now, tracking part counts and uptimes and downtimes automatically. But what about the quality of those parts? What about real-time SBC? What about all that sort of information that we could be getting? Now, if we don't digitize that inspection data that's coming back, if we don't get it into a digital format, then we can't really do much as far as scaling up or automating the rest of our PPAP process. So this digitization effect really is the first step in driving the other 4 principles that we're going to talk about here. Okay. Now, everything that we're going to talk about here today, this applies here as well as the other 4 steps. HiQA, this is what we do day in and day out, is we help companies go through digital transformations in their quality departments. Okay, so just keep that in the back of your mind. Maybe save some specifics for the Q&A section at the end if you have some questions about how a system like this might be implemented. Okay, so digitizing our data is first step. Now, a lot of companies already have gone through that process. They've digitized the data, maybe just in an Excel format, right? So maybe you're at that level now. So maybe you've got Excel spreadsheets available on computer kiosks or tablets or something out down on the shop floor or in the QC lab or something. And so you're, somewhat proud of this, but it's still frustrating, right? Because even though you're digitizing those, it's not really into into an organized system, right? So we're going to touch on that in just a minute a little more. But when we're talking about this digitizing, we're talking about everything from quality planning, right? And planning we break down into 2 modes. Inspection planning, so you can see ballooning the prints, creating the bill of characteristics is what we call this, all of the quality requirements. So HiQA started out as a system that can do one-click auto ballooning. Okay, taking a drawing, taking a 3D model, and automatically extract all the characteristics in a single click, as Tim mentioned earlier. But the other side beyond inspection is the project planning, right? So digitizing this stage as well, not just from paper and so on, but taking the risk mitigation, the risk planning of FMEAs and control plans and so on, and putting that into a digital format is super critical here to the rest of the process. Collecting all the digital information from all of your inspection equipment rather than printing it out into PDF reports and such. And I would say I would make the case, or we would, that generating a PDF report out of a CMM or vision system or something of that nature, while it's digital, it's not technically useful information, right? We want it output in a truly digital way that's able to be leveraged, right? Because PDFs are just static objects. I can't parse that easily. We want it output in some sort of consumable format, okay? Same thing for our manual inspection data, right? So rather than inspecting on pieces of paper, as we're suggesting, putting it into a tablet, putting it into a kiosk workstation on the shop floor, not just Excel, but some kind of an app, right? That's actually bringing it in. And this is one of the tools that HiQA is offering here, is connected data collection applications so that you can seamlessly, easily access that inspection plan the requirements because we've done the ballooning in a digital format. We've done the inspection planning in a digital format. We have work instructions, inspection procedures, all in a digital format that's accessible in real time by the shop floor now. And then they're inputting their actual measured result data into these applications and synchronizing that in real time now with those inspection plans against those records. Okay. And that all leads to digital reporting. Okay, so a big thing that we run into with PPAP or companies trying to accommodate PPAP requirements is things like SBC and Gauge R&R, and that's sort of like advanced statistical reporting because it's a lot of data that needs to be collected. Okay, and so aggregating that data, putting it into meaningful reports is a lot of copy and paste through a lot of different Excel spreadsheets and tabs and such, especially if you're collecting it on paper. Okay. So digitizing it from the source of the information, and then that brings us to the next step is not just digitizing, as we were talking about, right? Not just digitizing in Excel spreadsheets, but also digitizing it in a centralized format, okay? Now, as Tim mentioned, one of the key elements of HiQA's systems is the centralized database. Right? A lot of our customers ask, well, when I'm putting data into those data collection apps on the shop floor, is that synchronized in real time? Like, do I have to click save? Do I have to do anything? No, you're entering your data and that data is automatically being synchronized to a centralized database format, okay? So current state, even if you are digitized, let's say you're using Excel spreadsheets and such, you have some sort of file storage system like this. The problems here is that, one, it's difficult to standardize processes around here, and due to your limited enforcement options that you have, right? Because while you may try to put security policies in place and such around those folders and the permissions and everything, at the end of the day, once you get to a certain number of employees, once you get beyond 30, 40, 50 employees, and some of you on the call may have hundreds or thousands of employees that you're trying to manage, we all know that different departments and different employees are going to end up implementing their own sorts of workarounds, methodologies, and so on. And they're going to develop their own templates and all this stuff. So having the data organized in one central place is huge. Another challenge here that we see in the current state is difficulty in collaborating with your coworkers. So if I need to get some input from one of my team members on a particular spreadsheet I'm putting together, I have some limited options as far as like how I share that spreadsheet. Depending on the setup that you have, maybe you can't open the file both at the same time. Maybe I have to walk over to their computer kind of to be able to see it in front of them. That's somewhat easier now that we have things like Teams and such, but this could be challenging, the collaboration aspect of it. And this causes departments and such like manufacturing, NC programming, CMM programmers, and quality departments all to be somewhat disconnected. And there's typically some sort of project manager who is spending a large part of his time chasing around the different reports, the different files that need to be aggregated into these folders instead of everybody kind of storing and following the procedures to keep their files organized into folders to begin with. So we all understand kind of the challenges that occur with a system like this. Okay. And even if you do have the data organized well and everybody's following the standard, it's still difficult to navigate even digging through some of these folder structures. And so, rule of thumb, if audits are painful because you can't find what your auditor wants, then your data isn't really centralized. In other words, it's going to be painful for you to find your own data if your auditor can't find it. Okay, so simple rule of thumb, something I heard from a paperless ERP company that I thought was pretty good. So within this, how do we approach this? When we say centralized, we're talking about organized data. Okay, so HiQA, with our centralized database, we organize all of the data somewhat similarly to how it's organized in an ERP system, right? And so something to think about is we all kind of understand that we need an ERP system rather than just Excel spreadsheets to manage orders. But quality really needs this as well. And so for some reason, over the years, we've accepted Excel spreadsheets for organizing the same sort of data structure. But this is ultimately what we need, is we need a database that allows us to track our quality data according to part numbers with their revisions, jobs, lots, operation steps, the serial numbers of the parts. Whether you serialize or not, you need the sample data at the very least, and then the inspection results within them, right? We want our data to be traceable, okay? So for inspection results that we're collecting in a digital format, we want to know the measured values, the inspector ID, the date, time, and then the asset information, right? We want to know the gauge that was used, the machine, the fixtures, the molds, the cavities, the cutting tools. All that data is highly traceable if you can get it into a centralized format. Digitized, then centralized. Next, we've got quality project data that we also want to centralize into one place, right? So within the context of a job or a work order, you may have a different name for it, right? But at the end of the day, your customer places an order for X number of parts, and you need to keep track of all of the project details, which are typically having to do with the quality outcome of those parts and recording all that data. You need to keep it all in one place. Okay, so HiQA kind of does this for you. We keep track of everything from the balloon drawing, the inspection plan, the operation requirements, submission requirements, the inspection result data, all organized hierarchically like we discussed in the previous slide, all the reports, and even project timelines and status, so that you can go to one spot to see in real time where everything is at. Okay, so once we've done these two steps, we've digitized our data, we've centralized it. Now it's time to start building those enforceable standards, right? So we're going to templatize from here. So when we're templatizing, what's the problem? We kind of mentioned this and hit on it previously, but employees are improvising with their own forms, checklists, processes, and so on, right? The best practices that they're identifying, it's really difficult to aggregate those and leverage them across the organization because you have no centralized system upon which to build and scale. And then next, your customers are receiving a huge range of documentation formats and data presentations, right? So if you don't have those standard templates, those standard report outputs and so on, then the data is being presented to your customer in totally different ways, and it's just not professional, right? And so we want a system to be able to help us with this. So within the HiQA PQP system and PQP, production quality planning, okay, we have a huge variety of out-of-the-box templates that help you enforce the AIAG sort of standards from the PPAP process, right? So we have standard reports. Okay, so for things like, so this is a screenshot from our system of a system component library out of the box, right? So you have reports like first article reports, inspections, SBC reports, gauge R&R, even things like part submission warrants, which we'll see in a couple of minutes here. Okay, we have, and also your FMEA process flow and control plans and such. Project checklists. Now, this is a big one that we come up against with customers that are looking at a system like ours for the first time. This is somewhat revolutionary or unprecedented in that a lot of customers, we ask them, so what's the standard set of requirements that you have from various customers? And they say, oh, well, it's broken down by a lot of different things. There's variables and so on. And I say, well, let's pick a part. Okay, and so they pick a part number that's an active order, and I say, well, tell me everything that you need to collect for documentation against this part. And there's so many companies that we talk to that aren't quite sure all of the details that they need to collect at any given time. And if they are sure about it, it takes them a significant amount of time to get to the place that tells them that information. And so we keep templates of project checklists, or what we call indexes here. And so you can use either any of our out-of-the-box templates, see here like a standard new part PPAP index or a repeat part, right? So you can build indexes checklists of document requirements. And they can be built around your needs based on your customer requirements, based on different part profiles, maybe like assemblies versus components or sub-assemblies and so on, right? So maybe you have different types of checklists for those needs. And that way, they're all in one system. It's all in one place. It's kind of pre-planned and organized. Standard workflows, right? So we talk to customers about this as well, where different departments will have different workflows or concepts, and you may not even think of it as a workflow, but you do it nonetheless, right? Some documents need signatures, some don't. Some documents need multi-department approvals or different personnel to review and kind of pass things off. And so we can have templated workflows that are applied automatically to certain documents based on the business logic that's defined in the system. And then again, standard packages. Now this kind of closely mirrors the project checklist that we're talking about here, but you're able to build standard packages where you can bundle all of the documents at the end of the process into a single submission package. It's a single PDF with all of the different reports and forms and attachments all bundled into one output. And we'll see that in just a minute. So again, when we're talking about templatizing, it's not just the reports and forms and so on. It's also, when we're talking about PPAP, it's a lot to do with the FMEA and PFlow content. Okay, and FMEA being the more significant piece of this, where if you're putting FMEAs together, Tim mentioned this earlier in the introduction about save as, right? A lot of companies we talk to, this is kind of standard practice where you have an Excel report, all your FMEAs are in Excel, and so if you have a new job that comes up, you go and find a previous FMEA that's kind of similar, and you just start adapting it like crazy. Okay, well, no more. We don't want to do that anymore. What we want is a standard library of all of our processes within our organization and all of the potential failure modes, all the risk, all the risk assessment, the risk mitigation tactics, and everything kind of organized into one standard process library. Okay, so that way, when we start building our FMEAs and our PFlows for individual projects, the system already knows, based on the operations you defined, what your potential risks are, and it builds the FMEA for you automatically. Okay, so templatizing this content even is a huge aspect of automating your PPAP processes. So the fourth principle here, we're going to connect. Okay, we want to connect on a variety of different levels. So first, we want to connect quality data from the drawing all the way to the reporting and everything in between. Okay, Tim mentioned in the introduction the digital thread. Okay, this is something we talk about a lot. A single system that allows you to track the digital thread all the way from beginning to the end of the process. Okay, and to date, there's not really been a system to allow you to do that in the quality department. And so that's what we're here for. And the other aspect of connection is maximizing collaboration and communication. Okay, so from this point, I want to jump over into the demo portion. We're going to take just a few minutes to get a feel for the environment that is high QA. So I'm going to pull this up right here. Okay, now this is a demo environment. Now I've got a part set up. We're not going to do it from scratch for the sake of time. We just want to help you understand what it's like having all this in one place. So when we talk about part records, that hierarchy of data association that we were talking about in the centralized database, when we talk about part records, a part record is always associated with a drawing. We don't just think of parts as metadata like an ERP system would. It's associated with a drawing, with a particular rev of that drawing, right? So while we have part properties here, I'm looking at a particular record. We have part properties. I know my customer, I know the part number, the rev, the part name, the units, the material that we're using for this, the type of part, okay? If it's a specific part category. Now, this is something we mentioned in the templating stage of I can build part category templates, which allow me to store all sorts of configuration settings and preferences that might be related to this customer or the type of part that it is, and so on. So that way, when I'm making a part, all I have to do is really assign a category to it, and a whole bunch of settings and configuration is automatically applied to this part record for me. I don't have to reselect everything every time. And that can be things like my what we call designators. So that would be criticality of a feature. So when setting up the first few parts in my system, right, if I'm new to HiQA, then I can pick out of the box designators or build my own. So I can say some features are critical, major, minor, so on. But maybe certain customers have certain preferences, right? And so having everything in a single system like this with the templating capability that we have allows me to build all of those preferences into a single source of truth for how I do business. Okay. So again, foundational principles of what we're looking at here, the drawing, okay, with all of the balloons, and everything here is interconnected. Okay, from my bill of characteristics to my drawing that I have here. Okay, so this is really the inspection planning side of it. Okay, and I can easily create manufacturing operations like what I've done here. So I can have like an op 20 like this. And this would mirror whatever routing I have in my ERP system. We'll talk about kind of how to leverage that in the next principle when we talk automate. But see, I'm able to easily build a unique and contextualized balloon drawing and list of inspection requirements for a specific operation. And this is setting, when I do this and I set this part up, I'm setting the groundwork for the P-flows, the FMEAs, the control plans, and so on, all the reporting that I'm going to do throughout the project. Okay. So I'm defining my operations graphically and intuitively from the drawing. Okay. So all of that capability is in here. And this can be done through 2D drawings or 3D models like we suggested, right? If there were multiple pages, then I'd be able to see the multiple pages in the drawing package here and so on. So all that's manageable. We've been doing this a long time. So I'm taking certain things for granted. But for the sake of time, let's keep moving. The PQP records is really the process that we're talking about today when it comes to managing PPAP, because in addition to the inspection requirements that we were talking about here, and we're tracking all the jobs under this particular part, we're tracking all the sample data, that's all the inspection results and so on that come through. We're also doing all of our project planning in this one system for all of our PPAP requirements. And so in here, what we've done, this is what we were talking about as a checklist or an index, okay? And so this is the list of all the documents that need to be accounted for by the end of this project, okay? And you can see there's documents already issued against most of these line items, right? So the capability study I don't have yet, the FAI report I don't have yet, etc. But I'm able to go through and see there's my balloon drawing that I could pull up, my part submission warrant. Here, let's just click into one of these and see. Okay. Oh, here, I'll back up. So we've got part submission warrant, and let's get a better example here of a P-flow here that we have. Here we go. Okay, so we have a P-flow that has, now these are standard templates that we have out of the box, right? And you'll see the operations that were pulled in here automatically based on what we picked up from the drawing side. Okay, so what we had planned for, it's flowing, it's syncing automatically. If something changes on the drawing side, like rev changes, or I change my process or something, I switch the operations around, or I pick a new routing, I can sync that process forward. I don't have to re-enter it or re-modify every single one of my forms. The system takes care of that for me, right? So that's part of that connection process that we were talking about, is everything is interconnected by having everything digitized, everything in a centralized database, and everything templated, okay? So we have our P-flow that we have here. We have our FMEA here. Now, this is kind of what I was talking about before, what I was referring to, is that we have the source document. This FMEA is linked to our P-flow, Okay, so it's giving me a warning here when I look at that FMEA. It says, hey, your P-flow has been updated. Do you want to modify the FMEA? And we can just say sync the process, and it'll pull those changes forward. Now, when we were talking about templating, I mentioned the process library, because when we generate our FMEAs, it's syncing from the operations that we defined. And for each operation, it pulls in all the potential failure mode, the potential effects, severity, and so on and so forth, right? Calculating our RPN values. Okay, so this is a system that we've spent a lot of time putting together and really optimizing, and it can do an amazing amount of automation within your facility as well, I'm sure. And so if you look at this, these are not just static forms that are going out to PDFs or simple reports. These are interactive. You can engage with these. You can click into here. You can select options because the system has memory. It knows what you've previously entered into these fields for other parts, other jobs. And so it'll make recommendations, and it'll auto-populate as you type. Or you can type new options in and save those. Okay. We can update our severities, our occurrence, and that will update our RPNs and tell us if we have any risks within this project that are at a medium, high, or hopefully at a low state. Okay. And last, we've got control plans here. Okay. So our control plan, again, connecting everything through the process. Our control plan is, again, listing out our operations, but this time listing all the dimensions that we're checking at each one of those operations with their evaluation and measurement techniques, their sample size, their sample frequencies, and so on. So all of this data is synchronized all the way through. And again, if the P-flow changes, the control plan is going to change. And if just like the FMEA, it's connected together. Okay. So these reports and these forms, they function kind of like mini apps. Okay, so they have a workflow associated with them. They're interactive. They have a workflow history, right? So every time something happens within this document, I'm able to see the full history of it. So there's traceability, transparency, okay? And there's action history as well, where I can see anytime somebody's engaged with this, edited it, maybe if they've, see, I can directly send by email. I can print these out to PDF or Excel, depending on the options that I've set up in my reports. Now, something beyond this, we've talked about our out-of-the-box templates that we have, but something beyond that that I forgot to mention earlier on with templates is the customization options that you have within here too. So you're not confined to the out-of-the-box templates that we offer. While those are robust and typically meet the needs of 80 to 90% of what customers are already trying to accommodate within their current process. So they kind of slip right into our out-of-the-box content. But we've got robust and powerful designers for designing any of the different components that we have in here. Okay, so that can be reports, it can be workflows, it can be project checklists, and so on. Like all of these are fully customizable to your business needs. And those are things that we consult with you on. We kind of walk through that. We've got robust process for stepping through and assessing your current state of what your needs are, and then building the project plan for any of the content that you'll need mixed in with our out-of-the-box content to get you to where you need to be. Okay, so just a quick side note on that. So having all of this in one place like this, this becomes my project overview, where I'm able to see the status of all these items so that as they're advancing in workflows, my employees, the quality team, the manufacturing team, the inspection teams on the shop floor or in QC, they're all operating and performing their tasks. They all have tasks assigned to them within the system based on those workflows. And I can see the status of them. So these ones happen to all be in draft, but some might be in review, some might be waiting signature, some might be complete, right? Hopefully they all get complete. And so I'm able to see that by percentage. I can see if things have been emailed out. I can see the submission levels and the requirements there. Okay. And at the end of the day, I can build a single package rolling up all of these reports into one PDF that gets emailed out to my customer. Okay, so there's a lot to take in here. So I didn't want to get too deep in today with the demo. We can absolutely meet with anybody that's interested in more information. We're absolutely happy to meet and go through a personalized demo one-on-one. We can do that with any and all of you that would like to. So let's switch back real quickly just to talk about that last principle that we wanted to hit on. So lastly, we want to automate. So once we've connected all of the different systems together, we've digitized, we've centralized, we've templatized all of our content and connected, and so that we can follow that digital thread through the quality process in the manufacturing process. Now we want to automate. Okay, so one of the key aspects of automation is we have a powerful API for syncing your business systems. So we don't want to redundantly enter data. So when we're creating these part records, job records, and so on, we want to pull that data from your ERP system. So we can synchronize with any ERP system that's out there. We can, so that way, as you're creating parts and jobs and so on, it's automatically generating that content in Inspection Manager. We have a number of companies that when they create a part record or a job record in their ERP, it automatically pushes it into HiQA. It'll automatically balloon the drawing and create the rough inspection plan that's ready for an inspector, or sorry, a quality engineer to just come in and review and approve it and push it out to the shop floor. A huge amount of the initial lift has already been done. Okay, so this is where we can start kind of automating things for leveraging those first four principles to their fullest. And this API synchronization and so on leads to enabling some of these other items down here of automating the report population, that when we have repeat jobs, we already know the reporting needs based on the previous job. And so we're able to, there's controls to be able to automatically populate the reports on the subsequent jobs. There's automation around project initiation, like I talked about with part categories. You can define all of the parameters, all of the settings and configurations that you want for certain project profiles. Maybe that's by customer and so on. And then lastly, automated alerts and notifications, because what would an intelligent automated system be if it didn't proactively let you know kind of what's going on, right? So being able to have alerts that go right to your email, to your phone, whatever, to notify you when there's problems with inspections. So if you have failures on critical features and such, when your gauges are in or out of, or when they're out of calibration or expiring soon, and so on. So, and when you get reports assigned to you or documents assigned to you where you need to fill something out, you need to approve something, you need to sign something, all of those details can be proactively sent to your inbox through a centralized system like this. And so with that, we can move into Q&A, and I hope you enjoyed the session and the overview.
Great. Thank you for a great presentation. So before we have our presenters address some questions that have been submitted throughout the program, I want to remind you that we love your feedback in our webinar survey to help improve our programs. So now for our first question, we have a lot of good ones. Can drawings be loaded onto the HiQA system instead of built within the HiQA system?
Yeah, so the drawings are uploaded as, like, let's say, PDFs or TIFF files or even JPEGs. Some of our customers use JPEGs. But yeah, they would be drawings. Typically, you're collecting them from your customer, either in job shop format, the customer sends you a drawing, or maybe you have a design team internally that produces drawings or 3D models. But you upload those into the system, that kicks off the part record creation, and then you're able to automatically balloon those and start building inspection plans from there.
Great. Okay, another one here is the FMEA template to the AIG 4th edition or the new AIG VDA revision? Or is there another option to go between either format? I know some OEMs are not allowing the transition currently.
I have to check what our standard out-of-the-box one is up to at this point. But regardless of where that is, we can customize, we can modify reports to whatever your specific needs are. You could even host multiple FMEA formats in your system, depending on the different customers and the formats that they want to see.
Great. Okay, so another one is, what if we have to use a customer-specific format for the control plan or PFMEA?
Essentially the same answer, that we typically look at these projects of implementing a system like this with our customers. We look at them as with kind of a consultative approach, where we sit down and we develop a scope of work for identifying which out-of-the-box templates in our system work for your situation. As I mentioned, I think that it typically is around 70, 80, 90% of the needs for reports and such are accommodated by our out-of-the-box templates. But then there's always that, 10, 20, 30% or so that needs to be built and customized. And that's something where we're not custom coding or anything like that. We have sophisticated designers that are intuitive to work with, and we often will do a lot of that work for our customers anyway. And we're able to spit those out or turn them around in typically, a couple of days or a week.
Okay, another one is, what ERP system is compatible with HiQA?
So because of the API that we have an extremely robust, powerful API. It's a RESTful API for any of you that are interested in the specific technology type. But it's a RESTful API, and we're able to connect with virtually any ERP system out there because we're able to, if that ERP has its own API that we can tie in with, or even if they're operating at a database just with a SQL database or something like that. Some of them are access databases and such, but we can typically do some sort of read out of those systems as well.
I can add maybe another layer of the integration with ERP system. The level of integration can be not just one way, either we get data or we send data. It can be bi-directional data exchange based on trigger. And I can mention even two very large ERP systems like Oracle or SAP that we are already integrated, as well as a couple of, call it mid-range ERP like Epicor and others. So the level of integration is very flexible based on the API that Chris mentioned.
Thanks, Sam.
And for those wondering, I'd like to introduce Sam Golan. He's the President and CEO of IQA.
Thank you, Tim.
Great. So another question that came in is, does the software come validated for Part 11?
The software has...
So we have...
Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead.
So we have an entire validation kit that we supply to a lot of our medical customers who are CFR Part 11 certified. Yep. It's a very common thing that we run into, and we have a large number of, it's actually a very rapidly growing segment of our customer base is customers that are 1345 and FDA regulated.
Great. Okay, another one is, are you able to map balloons to millimeter results for individual CMM programs so they match up?
Yeah, that's an extremely common practice, is integrating with CMM so that the balloons on the drawing match with what's in the CMM program. And there's all kinds of methods and approaches we have for dealing with legacy content. That's typically the biggest concern that people have, but it's something we're extremely accustomed to, and it's something that we do several times a week, bringing on new customers. So.
Just emphasizing again from my side that it's not just CMM, it can be VMM, ARM machine, any any inspection tool that generate digital results, including wireless, Bluetooth, whatever you're going to have.
Great. Okay, next one. How long has it taken for other companies to integrate your system into that company?
If we are talking about integration of the PQP by itself, when you are already high QA user, you have your experience 6 months or so, it may vary between, I call it 30 days to 90 days, depends on the depth and amount of users. And if it's, I call it out of the box template, it may be shorter. If we will need to provide you more customized, if you will, templates or modified template, it may take a little bit more, but it can vary between 30 to 90 days. If you are a new user for high QA, then it's going to be in, I call it 2 steps. You have to be trained and working with high QA for, I will call it 2 to 3 months before we jump into the PQP. As you learned from this webinar, it's all integrated, and the data source, in order to do redundant entry by hand, it automatically synchronizes with whatever you're going to do on the 2D, on the 3D starting point. So I will call it 6 months on a new customer up to the end of PQP implementation. And then I will call it 1 to 3 months on high QA already users, if you will. Nevertheless, if you are a new user, the inspection manager part of it before APQP, it's relatively very short training, and you're up and running in very quick time, couple of days.
Yeah, and something I'll tack on to that is something that's a bit unique with us. This is different from doing like an ERP integration or something like that, where
Correct.
you do a ton of prep work and then you have a cutoff date, like a system transition date from the old ERP to the new ERP. That's kind of what happens. And sometimes it's what people think of when they're looking at a system like ours, but that's not really the case. And so what we do is we've become very, very good at identifying sort of consumable milestones over the life cycle of the implementation. So what I mean by that is you can set kind of key milestones where you're gaining value from the system at increasing levels, right? So you can be getting value out of the system in 2 to 3 weeks with the basic training and the fundamentals, where you're starting to automate the ballooning process. Then you're integrating the digital data collection from the inspection teams, and then you're automating some of your project planning and so on. So we do it in consumable chunks so that you can be gaining value as you go and increasing that value.
Great. Well, thank you, Chris and Sam and Tim. That's all the time we have today for questions. But please join me in thanking both Tim Hogan, Chris Mendocino, and Sam Golan for their presentation, as well as our sponsor, HiQA. If you have any additional questions or comments, please don't hesitate to click the Email Us button on the console. Please visit qualitymag.com/events for the archive of this presentation, as well as information about our upcoming events. We appreciate your time and hope you found this webinar to be a valuable experience.